The snow fell slowly over the streets of New York, forming a thin layer of ice that cracked under the hurried footsteps of those trying to escape the biting cold. In the small corner grocery store, Liam adjusted his apron and rubbed his hands together, trying to fight off the winter air that rushed in every time the automatic door slid open. He had been working at that grocery store for months, but lately, everything felt heavier. Bills piled up on the tiny table in his cramped studio apartment, and even though he took on extra shifts whenever he could, his paycheck barely covered the basics. Deep down, he wondered if his life would ever take a different turn, or if he was doomed to this endless cycle of struggle. And then, she walked in. A young woman, barely in her 20s, holding a baby curled against her chest, wrapped in a blanket far too thin for this kind of weather. Her face was pale, and her eyes scanned the shelves with a mix of desperation and hope. She reached for a can of baby formula with trembling hands and walked to the register, where Liam was waiting. As he scanned the barcode, the price flashed on the screen. The woman's heart nearly stopped. "This can't be," she muttered, rummaging through her bag with frantic fingers. Her coins clattered onto the counter, and she pressed a worn-out card against the machine. A sharp, merciless beep echoed. Transaction declined. Her eyes widened. She bit her lower lip and tried again. Nothing. Liam saw the tears threatening to spill. The baby stirred, letting out a faint, hungry whimper, and she clutched the child tighter. The cashier behind them sighed impatiently, while other customers exchanged uncomfortable glances. Liam's mind raced. He had been in tough spots before. He knew what shame felt like, what it meant to be desperate and broke. He looked at the woman, at the helpless baby, at the can of formula, and before he could talk himself out of it, he discreetly pulled out his own wallet and swiped his card. Payment approved. The woman blinked, stunned. You paid for it?" Liam tried to brush off the moment with a small, awkward smile. "It's okay. Just make sure he's got what he needs." For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Then, silent tears rolled down her face as she held her baby close. "Thank you. God bless you." Liam shrugged it off, but something inside him warmed in a way he hadn't felt before. He had no idea that this simple act would change his life forever. That night, Liam left work with the cold still clinging to his skin, but something inside him felt different. The image of the woman holding her baby, struggling to pay for the formula, kept replaying in his mind. He had seen customers in tough situations before, but something about that mother, in that exact moment, had struck him in a way he couldn't explain. As he walked through the streets lit by the city's vibrant neon signs, he found himself thinking about his own wallet. The amount he had spent on the formula wasn't much, but for someone like him, someone who counted every penny, it wasn't exactly small either. It was money he might miss by the end of the month, but he couldn't bring himself to regret it. His apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old building in Brooklyn. The elevator was broken, again, so he dragged himself up the stairs, the smell of his neighbor's Chinese takeout filling the hallway. As soon as he stepped inside, he dropped his backpack to the floor and collapsed onto his worn-out leather couch. Reality hit like a punch to the gut. The bills were still there. Rent, electricity, credit card payment. He grabbed his phone and opened his banking app. His balance was lower than he wanted to see. "Great job, Liam," he muttered under his breath, letting out a long sigh. Still, as he stared at the screen, a strange thought took hold of him. What if I were in her shoes? Liam knew what it felt like to need help. He had grown up without many opportunities, bouncing from job to job, just trying to stay afloat. No one had ever stepped in to give him a hand when he needed it. What if that woman didn't have anyone either? And then, something inside him sparked. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe in this whole world, there just weren't enough people willing to help each other. Maybe that's why everything felt so hard. He had spent his whole life believing he had to survive on his own. But what if the key to changing his life was doing something different? With that thought echoing in his mind, he picked up his phone and started searching. He found a local community that organized efforts to help people in need. Donations, food distribution, support for families in difficulties. Something inside him urged him to save the page. Before going to sleep, he took his wallet out of his pocket and pulled out the receipt for the baby formula. He stared at that small piece of paper as if it had more meaning than it actually did. That simple decision had made something inside him change. He just didn't know yet how much it would still transform his life. Days passed, and Liam tried to go about his routine normally, but something inside him had changed. Every time he entered the supermarket and saw customers going through the checkout, he remembered the woman and the baby. He wondered if they were okay, if the formula had lasted long enough, if she had managed to get help. What he didn't imagine was that his answer would come much sooner than expected. On a busy afternoon, Liam was organizing some shelves when he heard the manager calling. "Liam, can you come here for a moment?" He dropped what he was doing and walked to the checkout, where a woman was waiting. When his eyes met hers, his heart gave a slight jump. It was her. This time, without the desperation in her eyes, but still with the same tired look, the baby was sleeping in her arms, breathing peacefully. "Hi. I didn't know how to find you, so I came back here." Liam was speechless for a moment. He never expected to see her again. "Oh, sure. How are you? How is he?" he asked, looking at the baby. The woman smiled, a sincere smile, but one that carried an invisible weight. "He's fine. I just wanted to thank you again. What you did meant more than you can imagine." She hesitated for a moment and then, almost awkwardly, held out a small envelope to him. "I can't pay for what you did, but I wanted to give you this." Liam took the envelope, confused. Inside, there was a handwritten letter. He frowned and looked back at her. "What is this?" "Read it later. I just wanted you to know how much this changed my life." He stood still as she smiled and, without saying anything else, walked out the supermarket door. Liam looked at the envelope once more, feeling a knot in his throat. He never expected anything in return. But something told him that letter held something much greater than just a thank you. He just didn't know that his life was about to change forever. Liam held the envelope between his fingers as he finished his shift at the supermarket. Curiosity ate at him, but he decided to wait until he got home to read the letter. When he finally walked through the door of his small apartment, he threw his backpack on the couch, turned on the dim light of the lamp, and sat at the table. He carefully opened the envelope, unfolding the paper with the woman's delicate, slightly shaky handwriting. "Liam, I don't know if I will ever be able to express what you did for me that night. Maybe for you, it was a simple gesture, but for me, it was a sign of hope. My name is Emma, and the baby you helped is called Noah. What you don't know is that that night I was at my limit. I had recently lost my job, the bills were piling up, and the last can of formula I had ran out that morning. I spent the whole day trying to get money to buy another one, but I couldn't. When the machine declined my card, something inside me broke. I didn't know what to do. Noah was hungry, and I had no more options. At that moment, I felt like the world was collapsing until you intervened. You saved my son. You saved me." Liam swallowed hard and kept reading. "After that night, I started looking for help in support groups. I got a temporary job, and for the first time in a long time, I felt that maybe everything could work out. But that only happened because you showed me that good people still exist in the world. You gave me more than a can of formula. You gave me hope. I wanted you to know that. I wanted you to understand that what you did was not small. It was huge. It was transformative. And maybe, just maybe, this could mean something to you too. With gratitude, Emma." Liam read the letter once more, and then again. His chest tightened in a way he couldn't explain. He had never imagined that such a simple action could impact someone this deeply. For years, he had lived only thinking about survival. He believed that no one was looking out for him, so why should he look out for anyone else? But now he saw everything differently. Liam looked at the table full of overdue bills, at the cramped and lifeless space of his apartment. Then he looked at the letter again. Maybe, for the first time in a long time, he had found something that truly made sense, and he couldn't ignore it. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, Emma's letter still in his hand. Something inside him felt restless, like it was about to burst. He had never stopped to think about the impact he could have on someone else's life. The next morning, before heading to work, he opened his phone again and went back to the local community page he had saved days ago. He scrolled through the posts, reading stories about volunteers helping families in need, handing out meals to the homeless, and collecting donations for single mothers. He hesitated. This wasn't the kind of thing he usually did. He was just a grocery store employee, struggling to pay his own bills. What could he possibly offer? But then he remembered Emma. If a simple gesture had changed her life, maybe he could do more. Maybe helping wasn't about having extra money or a perfect life. Maybe it was just about showing up. Making a quick decision before doubt could make him back out, he typed a message. "Hi, my name is Liam. I'd like to know how I can help." He hesitated for a second before hitting send. The day at the supermarket went by like any other, but Liam felt different. For the first time in a long time, he had a strange feeling, like he was finally moving in a direction that made sense. Hours later, when he checked his phone during his break, he saw a reply. "Hi, Liam. So great that you want to help. We have a food distribution tomorrow night. If you want to come, that would be amazing. We can talk more there." Liam stared at the message for a few seconds. Tomorrow night? That meant giving up time he would usually spend resting. But then he thought about how he had felt after buying the formula for Emma, about how her letter had shaken something inside him. Maybe this was the first step towards something bigger. Taking a deep breath, he typed his response. "I'll be there." And without knowing it, that decision was about to change his life in ways he never could have imagined. The next night, Liam felt a slight nervousness as he walked to the meeting spot for the food distribution. The cold wind blew sharply, and he shoved his hands into his coat pockets, trying to ignore the feeling that maybe he was making a rash decision. He had never done anything like this before. As he turned the corner, he spotted a small group of people gathered near a van. Some were holding bags, others were organizing boxes. The smell of hot soup lingered in the air. He hesitated for a second. Did he really belong here? Liam? A voice called his name, pulling him out of his thoughts. A smiling woman with her hair tied up in a bun approached him. "Hi, I'm Sarah. You sent the message, right? I'm so glad you came." Liam nodded, trying to appear more confident than he actually felt. "Yeah, I've never done this before, but I wanted to help. And that's already amazing. Come on, I'll show you how it works." Sarah introduced him to the rest of the group and explained the plan. They would be handing out meals to the homeless, along with some donated winter clothing. As he helped organize the kits, Liam started observing the people around him. There was an elderly man with gray hair, a young guy who looked utterly exhausted, a woman trying to keep her small children warm. Each face carried a story, a silent struggle invisible to the rest of the world. When the distribution began, he handed a bowl of soup to an elderly man who held Liam's hands for a moment and smiled. "Thank you, son. You have no idea how much this means to me." Liam felt a lump in his throat. Maybe he did. With every meal served, with every conversation exchanged, something inside him expanded. He had always thought the world was a cold place, that no one truly cared. But now, he saw something different. Here, among people who had so little, there was gratitude. There was humanity. As the night came to an end, Sarah approached him. "So, what did you think?" Liam looked around. He felt tired, but in a good way, a different way. "I think I want to come back," Sarah smiled. "Then come back. We always need more people like you." At that moment, Liam realized that tonight hadn't just been about helping others. It had been about finding himself. He had no idea where this would take him, but for the first time, he was excited to find out. In the days that followed, Liam felt that something inside him had changed. The supermarket was still the same. His routine remained unchanged, but the way he saw the world was different now. He returned to the volunteer group whenever he could. At first, he only helped with distributing meals, but over time, he started talking to the people receiving the aid. He wanted to hear their stories, to understand how they had ended up there. That's how he met George. George was a middle-aged man with an unkempt beard and eyes that carried a deep exhaustion. He was always in the same spot, wrapped in a thin blanket. One night, when Liam handed him a meal, he noticed the man staring at the food without much reaction. "Are you okay?" Liam asked, crouching beside him. George let out a bitter laugh. "You're new at this, aren't you? I can tell by your face." Liam gave a small, knowing smile. I'm learning. The man sighed, stirring his soup with a spoon. You know what the worst part of being here is? It's not the cold, it's not the hunger. It's feeling like no one cares. Liam felt a pang in his chest. I care. George lifted his gaze, surprised. Why? You don't even know me. Liam hesitated for a moment before answering. Because someone cared about me when I needed it, and it changed everything. For an instant, George's eyes shone, as if those words had pierced through the invisible wall he had built over the years. That night, as Liam walked home, he felt like he was beginning to understand something he had never realized before. The impact of a choice goes far beyond what we can see. The gesture he had made for Emma and Noah hadn't just helped them, it had transformed his own life. Now he saw meaning in what he was doing, but he still didn't know that his journey was only just beginning. Liam's routine had changed. The supermarket still took up most of his days, but now he counted the hours until each meeting with the volunteer group. He loved the feeling of doing something that truly mattered. But nothing could have prepared him for what would happen that night. The group had gathered in a more distant neighborhood to distribute food and clothes. Liam was helping carry boxes when he heard a familiar voice calling his name. Liam? He turned around and froze. Emma. She was there, holding Noah against her chest, but this time her eyes didn't carry despair. She looked, well, Emma, what are you doing here? He asked, surprised. She smiled, adjusting the baby in her arms. I came to help. After what you did for me, I found this group and started coming whenever I could. Today was my first day as a volunteer. Liam felt a tightness in his chest. He had never imagined that the impact of his gesture would reach so far. Emma looked around, observing the movement. I never imagined that one day I would be on the other side, that I could help someone the way you helped me. Liam smiled. Life has a strange way of coming full circle, doesn't it? She nodded, looking down at Noah, who slept peacefully in her arms. If it weren't for you, I don't even know where we would be right now. You gave me hope, Liam. And now, I want to do the same for others. At that moment, something inside him was confirmed. A simple action can create a ripple effect far greater than one could imagine. Helping Emma and Noah was just the beginning. And now, the change he had started was spreading. But fate still had something in store for Liam. Something that would change his life forever. Liam had never felt so connected to something before. Each night he spent helping with the volunteer group made him realize how much his life had changed. He, who once believed he was stuck in a cycle of struggles, now felt like he was part of something much bigger. That week, while organizing the shelves at the supermarket, his phone vibrated with an unexpected message. It was from Sarah, the group coordinator. Hey, Liam, can we talk tomorrow? There's something I'd like to propose. He frowned, curious. What could it be? The next night, he arrived early at the volunteer meeting spot. Sarah was already waiting, sitting on a wooden bench with a warm coffee in her hands. Hey, I'm glad you came. She smiled, patting the seat beside her, inviting him to sit down. Of course. You said you wanted to talk. About what? Sarah took a deep breath before answering. About you. Liam raised an eyebrow, confused. About me? Yes. Since you joined, I've seen how much you've gotten involved, how much this has affected you. It's not just about handing out food, is it? It's about the people, about their stories. He nodded slowly. I guess I never realized how important this was until now. Sarah smiled. Then maybe you should do this on a bigger scale. Liam frowned. What do you mean? She pulled an envelope from her bag and handed it to him. There's an NGO that provides assistance to people experiencing homelessness. They have incredible programs. They help with food, temporary housing, job placement, and they're looking for someone to join them. I recommended you. Liam's heart pounded. You recommended me? For a job? Yes. I see how much you care, and I know you can make a difference. This is a real opportunity, Liam. Something that could change your life, and the lives of so many others. Liam held the envelope, feeling the weight of the decision. Working there would mean leaving the supermarket, taking a leap into the unknown. But for the first time, he felt like he was on the right path. That night, as he looked at the still unopened envelope on his table, he realized something. His entire life had been built around survival. But now, he had a chance to truly live. and he needed to decide if he was ready for it. Liam spent the whole night awake, staring at the envelope on his table as if it carried the weight of his entire life. Accepting this invitation meant leaving the supermarket behind, leaving the stability that, even if minimal, was all he had ever known. But it also meant something much bigger, the chance to do something that truly mattered. The next day, he arrived at work earlier than usual. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the sound of boxes being unloaded, just like every other morning. But this time, he knew it would be his last. With his heart pounding, he walked toward the manager's office. He knocked on the door and waited. "Come in." Liam took a deep breath before turning the doorknob. The manager, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, looked up from his computer. "Liam, what's going on?" He swallowed hard. "I came to hand in my resignation letter." The man frowned, clearly surprised. "Are you sure? You've always been a good employee?" Liam nodded. "I am. I found something that makes more sense to me. Something I really want to do." The manager was silent for a moment, studying him. Then, with a small smile, he simply nodded. "Then go and make it count." As he walked out of the office, Liam felt a mix of fear and excitement. It was the first time he had ever made a decision without fear of the future. Hours later, he met Sarah at the shelter where the NGO carried out its work. As soon as he stepped inside, he was greeted by a group of volunteers who seemed excited about his arrival. Emma was there too, smiling as she held Noah in her arms. "You really did it," she said, her eyes shining. Liam shrugged, laughing. I guess it was meant to happen. In the days that followed, he threw himself into his new journey. He met incredible people, helped families rebuild their lives, and witnessed stories of resilience he had never imagined. But more than anything, he found himself. One evening, while organizing some donations, he felt someone approaching. So it was true. Liam turned around and saw George, the homeless man he had spoken to weeks ago. But he was no longer in the same state. He was clean, freshly showered, wearing new clothes, and his eyes carried a different light. "George?" The man smiled. "I made it. The NGO helped me get a job. I have a place to stay now." Liam felt a lump in his throat. "That's amazing. I knew you could do it." George looked around, taking in the movement at the shelter. "All of this started because you helped that mother at the supermarket, didn't it?" Liam took a deep breath, remembering the moment that changed everything. "Yeah, it all started with one choice." George nodded, as if understanding something profound. "Funny? A simple choice, but look at the impact it had." At that moment, Liam realized something he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Small acts of kindness can change the world, because when you reach out to help someone, you never know how far that change will go. He smiled, feeling warmth spread through his chest, and this was the life he had always wanted to live.